All right, welcome to Scrapbook Live. I am Megan Jacks. Today is October 25th, and we're going to be putting together some borders today from the Creative Memories blog. These borders were shared on the blog in June 19th of 2023. They are showcasing the Fireworks Punch with the Enchanted Wizard collection. I'm going to be using the Fur Baby collection with some additional paper and cardstock, and then I am using Paw Punch, and I am using the firework punch. We're going to use it in a kind of a like a sun. That fireworks punch is pretty fabulous, and it can do a lot of things. And I'm using it as a sun today in the border I'm going to make. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over here to my overhead camera, and we will get started. If you do need the handout, just so you know, if you're watching this on Facebook live right now, the description, somewhere there's a link to my blog that has the handout. If you're watching this on YouTube later, there'll be a link in the description below where you can grab that handout to get going. So if you have your handout, I also have a pencil ready to go. There will be some measurements when we get to the third border that I will share with you, and you might want to be able to jot them down. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start off with the Magic is in You border. This is just a super cute, pretty straightforward border. I have it here. I've already pre-made all of the borders so I could work through them and make sure I knew what I was showing you guys. So I wanted to try using some washi tape. We got the washi tape if you were able to take advantage of the pop-up promo they did for the virtual crop. That was like, yeah, just recently, right? Oh my gosh. The weeks are all blending together for me. So I'm using the darker wood tone washi tape. We're just going to use it across the top of this. It's probably a pretty basic use of washi tape, just using it like as a background strip, but I thought it'd be fun to use it. There's quite a bit there, so we can definitely do quite a bit with these washi tape. And I'm using the paw punch and just keeping it pretty straightforward. So here we need a background and a second background and a third background. There's actually 3 layers here. You can see they have the blue. In the handout, they have the blue, then they come in with the polka dot, and then they come in with the red, which serves as a background to the punches themselves. So kind of what they did here, though, is they picked a tonal base. Like that blue diagonal stripe is a very tonal. I am going to be coming in with the green. Now, unfortunately, my green paper, you see my meows are all going sideways, but because I'm only using a little thin, narrow strip of it, you don't see really much there. You can see you can't tell that that's a word. So it's okay that we can't tell that it says anything. We're going to be using on its side. It works perfectly fine. Then we need a more decorative paper. They use the polka dot. I'm going to be coming in with the stripe, and this stripe is out of the fur baby dog. It says woof woof on the back, but I love the stripes. I love that it has all those colors in it. So we're going to use the fur baby, that stripe in there. And then I am coming in with that tonal piece that's going to actually serve as something that lets my punches all pop off. I want my punches to be able to stand out. So I have come back to this, it's the cat tree paper. On the opposite side is just polka dot or like light dots. I think it actually had the paw punch or paw print on it, but the other side is the beige tonal cat tree pattern. And that's going to sit on here as such. I did not do any modifications to the measurements on this particular border. So we're going to go ahead and just start putting it together. Normally, I would tell you I probably would come in and try to find ways to conserve paper, because here you can see I've got a full swath of the green, a full swath of the stripe, and a full swath of the beige. And I've covered up a lot of that stripe paper, but sometimes when you just want to put things together, you're not really in conserve paper mode. You're more in just get this border done mode. And we're going into the let's get this border done mode. You might be able to change it up if you wanted to and save paper, especially on this very back piece. That's probably an area if I really wanted to, I could probably have conserved paper on my green paper. So I know people ask about that a lot. Is there a way to do this with conserving paper? And yes, there is. I'm not necessarily going to demonstrate it because of the way everything kind of comes together. All right, so to begin with, we are going to go ahead and cut a 3 1/4 inch strip of our background piece, which is our green. And I am just cutting this with a straight trimmer. This is an area where you definitely, either one of these layers, either the green layer or the stripe layer, you could add a decorative blade if you really wanted to. That would be a great area to add those decorative blades. I am going to leave it just as a straight edge. So 3 1/4 inch. Next up, it says I need to cut a 12 by 2 7/8 inch, and that says the dot paper. So that's my decorative paper, my colorful paper. And I'm going to come in with my stripe, and that's 2 7/8. So just shy of that 3 inch line, just shy of that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Keeping my papers I'm going to set my excess pieces to the side so that I can see right there that I've got that, a little bit on either side. Next up, I need to cut, now I'm ready to go on to step 2, and it wants me to cut a 12 by 2 inch strip of the red paper, which is my tonal paper that's going to be behind my punches. So for me, that's the beige cat trees. And it needs to be, just reminding myself, 2 inches. I'm going to come over here to 2 inches. Now, obviously, these papers that I'm using, I am planning to make my border will go horizontal. Depending on the papers you've used and their patterns, I could have rotated all my punches and turned them to be vertical, right? And I could make this a vertical border if I needed to. So for me, the punches are what gives this border a direction. My paper does a little bit because the cat trees, definitely the way I've punched them, they need to go side to side. You can tell that they could go horizontal. It probably wouldn't be, or vertical, excuse me. It probably wouldn't be super noticeable, but we're going to just keep it as a horizontal border. So they want us to start assembling things. I'll go ahead and do that. I've got my mat here. I'm going to go ahead and attach this base or this stripe paper to my base. I'm going to use some just regular adhesive, and this just gets centered. Since I'm going to center it, I'm just going to go ahead and line this up. You can line it up wherever. I usually do try to center it over the 6 inch line. It just helps me find that center a little bit easier. So as I'm doing it, I'm going to come down here. Here's my 6 inch middle of my mat, and I can just kind of look and see. I'm going to come out here it looks like center on this one is going to be starting at 4 3/8. Remember, 0's over here. I'm going to come over here to 4 3/8. And then I should the right side should be at 7 5/8. Double check up here at the top, make sure I'm at the same so I'm nice and straight. Now when I put this piece on, I'll be able to find the center. It's just giving myself that even space. Now, because this decorative striped piece was cut to be 7/8 of an inch, 2 7/8, it's a little bit more challenging to center. You're just looking for even spacing on either side. And I'm coming up here to the top and trying to do the same. All right. So there we go. That's all centered on there. This next piece, when I put this tonal piece on, I am actually going to bring it down, and I'm going to to do this, I'm going to line up I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to adhere this base piece to my mat. Okay. Use some repositionable adhesive, just a little bit on the back. I'm going to adhere it to my mat. You could do it down here at the bottom. In fact, that's where I will do it so that when I give you measurements, you can know where I'm going. So I'm gonna come down here to the bottom of my mat, line it up. I've got that repositionable adhesive on the back. That is gonna let me do this step of putting this piece on and having it even across the bottom. I can use my mat to do so. And then when I put that washi tape on, you're gonna see that it's gonna be super helpful to have it kind of secured in place so that when I'm putting that washi tape on, the border itself doesn't move around. Okay, so I'm gonna put some adhesive on this beige piece. I want about an even, I've got a spacing down here where it's the background up to my designer paper or the designer pattern. I want about the same thing. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna find, looks like I am 3/8 of an inch from the bottom. And that's what I'm going with. 3/8 of an inch from the bottom on both sides. And I'll adhere that down. So there I've got, it's hard to see, but you can see, now you can see it. I've got roughly the same spacing, maybe a little bit more of that stripe showing. But in general, it's about the same, very close. Now it's time for the washi. All right, so washi is generally fairly forgiving on paper. Now, when you're using with cardstock, it probably works better than working with designer paper. So just be prepared for it to stick. You can maybe peel it up carefully, but you might want to play around with the stickiness of it and get a feel for it before you dive into putting it on your layout. But this is a pretty straightforward application of using a washi tape. So this one ends up kind of just blending in. It kind of just ends up blending in when you are, it blends in the sense of, it just looks like a dark strip of paper. Sometimes our washis have a lot more decoration to them. This one, you kind of do have a tendency to lose a little bit of the wood tone to it. But the one thing that's nice about the darker is it doesn't pick the stripe up coming through it. Sometimes washis, like let me show you on the lighter one, the washi sometimes will let a design come through the back. Okay, so here I'm just gonna leave that on there and you can see on the lighter wood, you can see that the stripe paper coming through in the back. The darker tone, and that's why I went ahead and went with the darker one, is because it won't let that stripe paper come through. The other alternative I could have done with this is obviously have just had a wider piece of this beige color and it wouldn't have come through. Okay, so I've peeled this back. And now again, I am searching for it to get about the same distance where I have the green. I want about the same amount of stripe showing at the top and the bottom. So I'm going to come over here to my outside of my measurements. I'm coming down again about 3/8 of an inch from the top of my border. Finding out where that is, and I'm going to put that on there. And I can tell a little bit that it's not completely even, so I'm actually going to bring it down just ever so slightly below that 3/8 of an inch. And I think that looks even. And then I'm just going to secure. I'm actually pushing down right now on the outside of my mat. You can see my thumbs are on the gray portion of the mat. And then that just lets me come in here and start at the middle and smooth it all the way to the outside. Now then you can come in here either with a pair of scissors. I've learned sometimes if I try to rip my washi, if I'm not great, I will actually rip it not correctly. So I'm going to use a pair of scissors and snip it. And then what I'll be able to do, I could just leave it here for right now and it's secured my stuff down and I could just do the rest of my border. What I can do though is I can come in here and just lift my border up, trim off the washi on both sides. I've got that repositionable adhesive in the middle is still kind of keeping things secure to my table, to my, to my cutting mat. So my border isn't going to go anywhere. So there's our basic border where they used a sticker. They used that kind of fun star sticker. I use the washi tape. Okay, so next up, we just need 6 elements. You can count here. They have 6 elements that come across the middle. They use 5 firework bursts and then 1 kind of a sticker element. or an embellishment or some kind of a little bit of a detail there, you can see. I ended up, for my sample border, I kind of did the same thing. I punched some paw prints. I do have, I have an orange already punched. I can punch a green. I ended up alternating 3 of the colors, the blue, the green, and the orange that I cut out of the designer paper. Let me go ahead and cut or punch those colors. And then I alternated them with the brown. I think this is actually rich brown. I don't know. It's not hot fudge. It's the one we had before hot fudge. And I need 3 of these hot fudge paws, or not hot fudge, the darker brown. You could use hot fudge. You could use any brown, anything that works. I mean, just I needed 3 of them because where they use, I actually have a total of 7 elements here on mine rather than they used 6, and I'm using 7 because I think my paw punches, I have them a little squished together a little bit more, and maybe they don't take up quite as much space, but here I've left a spot, and you can see in my original sample, I used a pretty narrow sticker that was an oval shape. I actually ended up going with my custom cutting system and coming in with, I think it's oval number 2. Let me see if I can quickly find. Of course, I'm not going to be able to quickly find oval number 2. But it was oval, I'm almost positive it's oval number 2, and I used the red blade on the inside track of oval number 2, and that's the second smallest oval, and that was to cut out I can show you on this sticker, this oval sticker here on the Fur Baby Girls. For baby girls, Fur Baby Cats. You can use oval number 2 red blade outside track, and you can make a mat for that little here kitty sticker. And that's what I did here. Now, rather than leave the washi just kind of by itself here at the top, I did feel that it needs a little bit more here to kind of just liven it up a little bit. So what I did is I added the border, one of the border elements out of the Fur Baby Cat laser cut pack. And to get this to stick, I ended up using a little bit more of the high extra strength heavy duty adhesive that we had. It was part of the adhesive buffet, kind of a promo events we've had. I used some of that on there to get it to stick a little bit more. So I do see some comments. Sandy is saying that she wraps the washi around the back a little bit. That could be a great idea too. If you've had, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not a washi expert. So I will be learning as I play more with these washis, but to keep it from potentially rolling up, she wraps it around the back. You could also burnish it a little bit. Sometimes I just use the back of a nail. You could come in with your multi-purpose tool and burnish it a little bit. The one thing I will tell you that I noted about using the washi because it's thin, it's thinner than our paper. It does pick up a little bit more of the detail. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Oh, there you can kind of see it. You can see it. You can tell where my paper ended here. So it does have a tendency to pick up that. That's just something to keep in mind when you're applying washi. If you apply it across different levels of paper, it will show you those levels of paper. That could actually be an asset, a thing to do with washi, to show those different kind of a little bit of like a 3D texture to it. But if you're wanting to not have that, you will want to make sure that you have a full strip of paper behind it and you're not actually going between two patterns like I did. All right, so hopefully with that additional explanation, you can get yourself all the way to the end where you have this final, something similar, however, whatever you need it to be for. Since I had 7 elements, or I had an odd number of elements in here, I was able to basically come in right at that 6-inch mark in the middle and place my first paw. All right. And then I was able to come in and space the other ones outside of that to get that spacing in there. So it works out really well when you have those odd number of elements. The center one can just be centered right over 6. If you have an even number of elements, say I was just using 6 paws, I would be able to come in and center 2 of them on either side of my 6-inch line and then space them out from there. But if I do that, then you can see that it just kind of changed the overall vibe of the spacing. It works. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this, but I just liked it to squish everything together a little bit more and have it start and end with the brown and get that sticker in there as well. So another comment I did see was somebody asking about, let me just a second, I'm going to scroll back up so I can see it a little bit better. I use the outside lines on the edges of the mat. It seems when you cut the trimmer, you put a paper up against the line rather than covering it up. Okay, so typically when I am on my mat, I'm not as feeling as specific, I guess, with it compared to when I'm cutting. The cutting, you do kind of have to figure out if you want to cover the line, before the line, after the line. You've got to just kind of determine what your cutting style a little bit. And you kind of want to be consistent then, right? The lines are very, very thin, but if you make a lot of 2-inch cuts and you have over the course of one piece of paper, whether you measure so that you can see the line or you're covering up the line is going to matter when you're making the cuts. Here, sometimes for me, I think it's actually easier for me to be able to see the line at the bottom than it is for me to cover it up. Now, that being said, sometimes I cover it up, but I make sure to cover it up on both sides. So the rule of thumb, whatever you do, if you're going to cover it up, make sure both ends are covered up. The starting and the ending end, you want to make sure it's completely covered up. If you want to see it, you got to see the whole thing. All right. So that's probably a little bit of a nuanced area where I'm not perfect. I'm not super consistent. It's just probably a little quirk within my work process. All right. So that is Magic is in Your Border, the first border on the handout. Next up, we're going to do the Full of Wonder border. Okay. So Creative Memories, when they designed these borders, I think these were from Chrysalin, I think. Just as a quick reminder, if you ever need to go to the actual Creative Memories blog article because you want to see if they have more pictures or whatever you want, the QR code will take you right there. You just scan it with your phone and it will take you. A lot of times when I am showcasing things on these handouts, I don't always bring over more photos. I did on this last border because there's some important details in the photos. This particular border, they give you a lot of description here. You might want to go check out additional photos. One of the things they want us to do is, let me show you, grab my sample. They had to make the different layers to ultimately conserve paper. What they did, like you can see this very top, this very first border piece right here. What that is a yellow circle with a striped circle on top. But before they made the striped circle, that blue, they punched out a fireworks punch. And then they took the custom cutting system and cut all the way around the punched out area. Practice this. I'm going to tell you right now, practice this before you do it. And the reason I'm going to tell you is, one, it works fine with the spacing of the the firework punch works good. The spacing will allow you to be able to use circle number 2, which is the medium-sized circle, to come in with your custom cutting system, grab your green blade. I think it's the green blade. Yep, the green blade, and cut around it. I'm going to just do a quick demo here on this piece of canary cardstock. All right. I've got a decent amount of spacing between the bottom of my punch. I can get my circle in here. I can actually use the, if I wanted to, I could come in here and I could line this up on my trim cutting mat. 6-inch comes down the middle here. 6-inch comes across the middle here. I can then come over to my circle, my medium circle, and I could come in here and line up my dots to help me get this all spaced. It works fantastic. Now I can't see very well to see overhead, but you guys can get the deal. You come in with your green piece and you're going to cut all the way around. Now, the one thing you got to note is you got to be careful. This is, you don't have a lot of space between the edge of your firework and what you're cutting. And I am cutting cardstock, right? Cardstock is pretty rigid per se, right? So I'm able to cut that out. See, I have a lovely little piece there. Now, I can tell you right now, because I tried this, I'm going to come over here with my paw punch. Now, paw punch doesn't quite give me as much space at the bottom, but it is doable. It's a little harder to center. I think there's not as many key parts of it that to be able to do. You can try your best and just guesstimate. I mean, I can line up center here and I'm just kind of guesstimating here, my middle, and then line up my piece. But I can tell you right now, I'm going to be real tight down here at the bottom. That's just how it's going to be. In fact, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to do it. I think it was real hit and miss on whether I could get it to work. Nope, it's not going to work. I'm going to lose. I could hear it leaving the paper. So it just doesn't work for all of the punches is I guess what I'm trying to say. The other thing I want to point out, if you want to try this technique because you really want these cute firework circles like this, I mean, they're super cute, right? When you do it on designer paper, you've got to practice because the designer paper is not as rigid as our the other paper. I'm just looking really quickly for here. This is designer paper. I'm going to go ahead and punch with the go ahead and punch there. Now I've got to come in with my piece here and I need to go ahead and trim around this. I can line it back up on my cutting mat. So it helps me center. That's super helpful, assuming you can see all the lines, but it just does help me get a place to start. Now, again, you just got to be careful though, because it is, and you've got to practice, go slow, hold down. I'm using my fingers in the middle to help hold and support the paper so that it doesn't want to pull away and rip. But I was able to get it, but this is probably the 4th or 5th one I've done. I was able to get it to work. So what I would recommend that you do is either get a piece of what I call ugly paper, maybe a paper you don't think you're going to use very much of. You could use the cover sheets of our paper packs. Now they're a little bit lighter weight, and practice that before you just start cutting your pretty paper, because I guarantee you probably mess up 1 or 2 before you get the hang of it. And also, if you're going to try out a different punch other than firework, you're going to want to check for your spacing. So we know that paw punch didn't work, but by golly, I really wanted to make this border. So what I ended up doing is I have just done all of the pieces separate. They are 3 different layers. I have the background layer, I have the layer here that's under the punch, and then I just went ahead and punched it separate. And that is perfectly acceptable. There's a little bit of nuance difference between the layering. If you're really, really into how things look when they're layered a specific way, that's going to matter. But visually in your scrapbook, nobody's going to notice the difference. If you were to simply, like in this sample, cut a yellow circle, cut a blue circle, punch a yellow firework, and stack them. That is probably the easiest way to do it. Uses a little more paper, but you're going to end up with a lot less possible frustration than trying to get that all worked out. Okay, so this particular border, I have one minor change that I did with it. It was only because of maybe the patterns I'm using and how I just put it together. But we need a base bit, which is going to be the brown dots. It's a darker tonal brown. Then I am using, we need a decorative paper, and I am using the yarn balls out of Fur Baby Cat. And then we needed to have 2 tones for the paw, the circle details. And I'm actually coming back to using this piece here because the opposite side you can see here is that tan paw punch. I wanted a little bit of detail. I thought the paw prints were fun. And I do have a nice, the paw punch has a really nice thickness to it that allows it to really stand off, even if you do have a little bit of a pattern going on in your paper. There was not too much of a pattern going on here that you can see here. The chocolate paw punch stands out against the pattern of that lighter paper. The other thing I did is you'll see here, I cut out 4 circles from my middle of my border. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my first base piece. So this needs to be at step 1, 3 1/4 inch wide, 3 1/4 inch. And then we need to cut a 2 3/4 inch strip from our decorative paper, which just has a little bit more of a print to it. So the 2 3/4, yours doesn't have to, yours could just be another tonal piece. I just think it's fun to use the yarn. I guess you guys should put in there. We've never, Kitty chases all sorts of things, but we don't have any yarn balls for her to chase. I mean, I think I don't know how realistic it is anymore that people have just yarn balls for their cats to chase. She loves all sorts of other things. But you have to, like, in comments, I don't know, does your cat chase after something like a yarn ball? Kitty, she does chase. I just don't give her anything. I mean, I suppose you got to make sure you secure the string really well. She's a kitten. She'll eat that stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, before I start layering things together, I am going to go ahead and cut out 4 circles. I want the 4 of my bigger circles. So we need 4 circles that are going to be cut with circle number 2. And I am going to use the, because I see okay. The reason that these cut out so well is because I used the green blade. And I made the mistake. I was actually supposed to cut this with the blue blade, which means that it would be even narrower. Now, what you could do is you could still cut them with the green blade. You can obviously see it works. And then you would make a mat that goes behind it by cutting with the red blade. For this particular design, we actually do have plenty of space on either side. If you needed to cut that if you decided to cut this with the green blade and then make it with the red blade for your backing piece, I'm going to go back to the original, what they said to do, and I'm going to cut them. The bottom layer of my circle needs to be cut with the green blade. Then I will have another layer on top that is cut with the blue blade. Just double checking. Yes. So I did make a little bit of a mistake when I was telling you guys and showing you how to practice them. You would want to actually practice this with the blue blade, which makes it a little bit more precarious. The red blade the green blade works really, really well. I would maybe consider doing that if you're struggling to get the blue blade and you really, really wanted this. But this is actually supposed to have been cut with the blue blade. But I'm cutting my background. Remember, my 4 pieces here, the dark brown is actually the same paper as the light brown. So when I cut 4 out of this piece of paper, I'll flip 2 over, use the reverse side. Just making sure I've got this reasonably centered on there and cut this out. You may have to cut yours differently depending on if you're able to use the reverse side, but you need 4 circles cut with the green blade on the inside track of circle number 2 of the medium circle. I will use 2 light and I will use 2 dark. Now I can go ahead and attach this piece over this one. So I'm going to grab my adhesive and sticking more towards the middle where I know it will be covered up. I'm going to use my mat again to help me center it. You can eyeball it if you need to. This one does have a little bit more of a generous side, or the background is a little bit, you've got more like a 1/4 of an inch on either side of your decorative paper. This is a little bit bolder there. You can see I've got a little bit more on either side. Okay, so now when I did this, I've already got my big circles. Now I need my slightly smaller circles. So I'm going to come back over here to my piece of paper. I actually have a scrap of this. You can see I was in a circle cutting mode yesterday. I'm going to cut now 4 circles with the blue blade on the inside track. And then lastly, what I'll need to do is punch 4 paw prints. So there's 3 of my small circles. Let's see here if I can squeeze one in. I'm going to just do a quick, yep, I should be able to get that in there down at the bottom. What I'm doing is just double checking, can I try to squeeze one in down there? And I should be able to. We will see. Before I cut, I'm actually just doing a quick running that blade around. There we go. So now I have 4 of those and they will stack like such. And actually, yes, so now actually what I need though is I do not need 4 paw prints because I used a decorative cluster here on one of my circles. So I need 3 of those paw punches out of this dark paper because I use the reverse side. Kind of the key to this look is to, whatever you use for the background circle, you need to use for your top layer for your punch. And then even though you didn't punch it out like a silhouette, you still have that same look. I'm going to trim off to expose more of a straight edge that I can use with my punch. And I need 3 of them. And then we'll come in and we'll just start assembling. Everything just stacks centered. So this one needs to have the light brown on top, so I'm going to put the adhesive on the back side. So I do see a comment about punching side by side. When I punch those out, I'll talk about that just in a second. Let me just get these assembled, and then I will talk about when you want to punch side by side, how are you able to tell? So punching side by side with, here's a scrap piece of paper that I rolled over with my rolling chair, so I only have a small section here I can use. When I punch side by side with something like the fireworks punch is easy because you can see the back side. Like you could actually just punch it from the back, and then when you go to make your second punch, you can see where your spacing is. Something like the paw punch is a little bit harder because underside is a little bit, it's harder to see down in there, right? So when the first one, what I've learned though is a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to be completely honest with you. You kind of have to get a feel for your punch and how it works. What I've kind of learned is I do have a little bit of leeway knowing where it's going to punch. You kind of just start to get a feeling for how much you can overlap, meaning how much of the previous design can I shove and not see. Like here, I've overlapped the other one, and you can kind of get an idea, like, can I go halfway over? I don't think I can. So I'm going to come back to where I can see 1, 2, 3. So I can see 1, 2, 3 of my little toes, and then I'll punch. And that gives me pretty good spacing. If I can see 3 toes on the previous punch. Now, here's the deal. All the punches are going to be a little bit different. So you just kind of have to get a feel for that punch. I wish there was an easier way to do it. You could probably then make a little note somewhere, maybe with a Sharpie on your, I could write here at the bottom with a Sharpie, it says 3 toes exposed, and that just tells me my spacing. But you do just kind of develop a feel for it. When you have these punches, they're like such where we just can't easily see what's going on from the back side. Okay, so I've got those elements done. Now it's time to come back to our border. Doing a quick little cleanup here just because I'm trying to be a little bit more cleanup as I go along, which is kind of hard to do when you're in the middle of a video. But here we go. So we're going to do assembly. I've got 4 pieces. So just how we talked before, when you want to be able to, how do you space these? Since I have an even number, I'm going to space 2 between 0 and 6, or 0 is up here at the top, 0 and 6, and another 2 between 6 and 12. I am going to alternate the light and the dark. And you're just kind of looking, I mean, you can, it looks like here, I don't even know where the spacing is. You can just kind of get a feel for it, right? Now, the one thing that I want to say here is when I did this, one of the things that really caught me off, I noticed, I felt like it was too wide for my, the overall border was wider than it felt like there's a lot of space still left. I thought about, well, I could still use some of the paw punch prints on there like they did. If you see, they tucked in those fireworks, but I felt like I need to come in with maybe, I don't know. And I totally could have, you can see they do look cute. You have some options there to be able to come in and tuck in those extra pieces that you want that helps you fill up the width of your space here. What I ended up deciding to do is I decided to come in with this light color and cut 2 thin strips and come down the sides. And here you can see what I did. See how I did that? These are just thin strips that I adhered. It just brought that lighter tan color out to the edge and just gave it, to me, just a little bit extra. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those thin strips. They were slightly wider than 1/8 of an inch. The goal is to get them about as even as you can. On your trimmer, 1/8 of an inch is cutting from your cutting line is the dashed line on the left. 1/8 of an inch is going to be the dashed line to the right of that cutting line. I'm going to push it just past that mark. Like I said, you just want it to be consistent. I think I ended up cutting 3 to get them consistent. I cut one. The second one I cut, I wasn't consistent with, and so I ended up having to cut a second one or third one. These are both consistent. They're a little narrower than my previous version of it. Grab my cutting mat or my silicone mat. I do not actually have any, I haven't stuck down those other pieces yet, but I'm going to come in here and apply some repositionable adhesive. And then I am just going to run this right up the edge. And you have the option if you want to straddle that seam between the two, or if you want to completely, leave more of the brown, the dark brown. Do I want to cover up more of the balls? It really doesn't matter. Whatever you do, just be consistent with it. I'm going to go just to the outside edge of the paper. And just come right down that edge. You do want to double check with, depending on how wide your pieces are, you've still got to leave room in the middle to be able to put, put your design in there. So you might, if you're worried that your pieces are too wide, you might lay them down just to double check before you adhere them. That will also dictate your spacing. And then I would go ahead and assemble these. And then when I did my layer here, I just clustered some stickers. I did use foam squares in there to pop them off a little bit. And I could have made this anywhere that I wanted to, in the sense of I put it, third down from the top. You could have put it third from the bottom like they did in the sample. Ultimately, I could have done this sideways and rotated everything. So you've got those options when you're doing this border. But all in all, that one came together really well. It's super cute to play with those punches. You probably could have come in here maybe and gotten 5 if you wanted a little bit more. Yeah, I think you could come in with an additional piece up here at the top if you wanted more. So don't limit yourself to the just 4 if you want. The one thing by doing just 4 of them, I can see more of my background paper. So that's just something to think about there. All right, so our next border is a little bit more challenging. I feel like we're just kind of stair-stepping ourselves into a little bit more complexity with each one of these borders. So the next border is it's called Magical Moments border. You actually have the option to be able to make 2 borders when you make this. I only put together one, and And here's my version of it. And this is actually what caught my eye wanting to be able to do this, is because I thought this was going to be the perfect layout, or the perfect border to be able to do I have a couple cute pictures of Kitty just languishing in the sunshine, right? She has found the sun on the floor. She has found it when she sits in her little window seat. She just loves the sunshine, even more so as we're getting into the cooler months when we actually don't see as much of the sunshine. So she needs an I love sun border. So what I did here is I was only really focused on making one, but you'd be able to make two. And you need a paper that's going to become the rays. They use the lightning bolt pattern in this particular sample. I used the sunshine paper that is actually out of the summer denim paper, which was the quarterly paper from Creative Memories. The opposite side is the teal. But I loved the sunshine that you can see on it. And I thought that would be perfect. And it doesn't go perfectly with Fur Baby, only because there's really no yellows in Fur Babies, but it has the same subtle intensity to it. So it fits in nicely with the oranges and the browns. I'm bringing over in some dark sea green cardstock, which kind of maybe doesn't work as perfectly with it, but it's going to work out fine for my the photos, largely because my cat is like orange and brown. And so I've got whatever color she's always wearing orange and brown. So if I put those colors in my layout and I coordinate my colors around orange and brown, I know it's going to look good with her photos. So I'm going to use this paper to make my rays. I have got some dark sea green that's going to be the background. It's going to be the base for putting my rays on there. I am also going to be coming back and using some of that striped paper out of the, it went somewhere. I thought I had a piece. Oh, I have it. Not that striped paper, the orange striped paper. And the opposite of that orange striped paper is the fur balls. Here it is, the orange striped paper. And I am coming back and grabbing the brown, the brown piece that has here's a new sheet of it. I think if I dig here in my mess of stuff, I'm using the darker brown here. I could also probably use dark brown cardstock if I wanted to. I wouldn't have to use tonal paper if I didn't want to. I think somewhere I had a piece. Oh, here it is on my trimmer. So I will tell you, when I did this one, instead of cutting the true bases like they said, I ended up piecing together the outside border edges here, rather than using two really wide pieces of the brown and the orange stripe. I just kind of put together those pieces, and I will walk you through that. We're going to make the ray first, and then we'll put the background pieces on. So I see a question about what paper pack that I'm using. Most of my stuff is from the Fur Baby collection. It's a mixture of cat and dog. For me, I just have a cat. I don't have a dog, but there was enough papers in the dog pack that I did like, so I am mixing and matching. And in this particular border, I am using the sunshine paper, which is out of the summer denim collection. And so that was an advisor only pack. If you're an advisor, it's sold out now, but you can check with your advisor to see if they have any in stock. So if you really like the sunshine paper, the opposite side is a really pretty teal. So to get going on this, there's a lot of measurements that they allude to in the picture. You can see all those. I've written them all down on here, and I will have little Post-it notes that have them on there as we're going through them. You are going to need a ruler, you're going to need your cutting mat, and you're going to need a pencil. Those are things you have to have when you're doing this particular border. Okay. So step number one is about creating the background bits where they would show the outside edges. We're not going to do that right now. We are focused on making the rays that are mounted to a piece of cardstock. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my cardstock. I'm going to cut it to 4 inches wide. If you want to make 2 borders, you can go ahead and cut 2 pieces to 4 inches wide. This piece is already 4 inches wide. I have, just a second here, I put together the rays of the second border, but I didn't actually finish the border out. So you'll be able to make 2 borders, all right? See how we can do the 2 borders. I am going to use the reverse side of this piece of paper rather than cutting another 4-inch piece. Oh, well, never mind. I'm going to cut another 4-inch piece. Let me grab another piece of dark sea green and cut a second one. It's helpful to have the 2 pieces for when you are sorting your cut pieces. So I have 2 4-inch borders. I'm going to set these to the side over here. I'm going to keep them close by. They don't need to go too far, close by. I need to cut down my sunshine or my designer paper here. They want this one to be cut to 4 by 12 inches as well. So this is going to be 4 inches wide. One thing to note here, my designer paper on this piece is non-directional. Okay, I've got sunshines, they can go either way. If you have a top or bottom to your paper, if you've got a directional paper, meaning that you've got trees here, right? And you want the tops of your trees to be on the top, to be going right side up. With the way that they have us putting this together, you will want to, well, first of all, ideally, you're going to just use non-directional paper. Partially because if you want to be able to mirror them, if you want to be able to do a border that has these options where you can do both sides, you really need to use a non-directional paper. Otherwise, one set of your borders is going to be upside down, one side. The pattern will be upside down because they were both cut this way. When I flip it around to have this narrow point be in the middle like it's a burst, something's going to go upside down. So ideally, if you're doing this, use a non-directional paper or use a paper that you don't mind if it goes upside down. If you look at the sample, you can actually see very faintly those lightning bolts are upside down in the sample. When she's cutting it here, they're right side up. In the example, they're reversed from how she cut it or she marked it. Lightning bolts you don't really notice. It's a very subtle upside down versus right side up. My sunshines won't matter, but if you have something like trees or hearts, you're going to see an upside down versus a right side up. Okay. If you do have something that you are trying to keep directional and you want to make this sample so that your center, your rays are coming in towards the middle here, you actually need to put the top of your paper at the bottom. We are going to follow this picture for our measurements and our drawing, but your top of your paper needs to be at the bottom, down here at the bottom. You're going to actually mark it upside down because we are actually marking it ultimately in reverse of how we want that sunburst to be. We marked it like this. Our center pieces all come and meet here in the middle here. But then when we create our border, we rotate it around so our center piece is over here. So if you are using that directional paper, top of your paper is at the bottom. Another thing I'm going to do here, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere this paper to my mat. The other thing I want you to do is pay attention. Your mat needs to look like this. We've talked about this before, or I talked about it in a previous one. Your zero measurement needs to be up here in the upper right-hand corner. Creative Memories is in the correct orientation so you can read it. 12 inches is over on this side. I've got a little bit of adhesive on the back of my piece of paper, and I'm going to line it up. Okay, now as I'm measuring things around, I don't have to worry about this piece sliding, right? It's kind of stuck in place. All right, so you need a ruler and you need a pencil. We're going to talk measurements here. If you have a pencil, I would like you, or something to write on. I actually used a journal paper here, or a journal. I'm gonna walk you through these measurements. As I measure them on my piece here, I will also put on Post-it notes, but I'm gonna walk you through them. The first measurement here is 2.5 inches. So 2.5. We're gonna come up here to 2.5 on this side. Let me see if I can do this so you guys will be able to see. 2.5. The next measurement is 3/4 of an inch. Those are 2 measurements along the top edge. Then we have our 0. 0 doesn't mean anything to us anymore. That was just to set up our mat, get our mat in the correct orientation. The next measurement is 1.25. After that, we're going to come down to 3 inches. Then we're going to go to 4.25 inches. Then we're going to come to 5 1/8. If you are watching this on video, you might want to pause it right now. Write these measurements somewhere that you can see them. Now, I kind of last minute thought of writing down these measurements, so I don't have the second half of the measurements written down, but I have them on my sheet. I just don't have them as Post-it notes. Our next measurement is going to be 5 3/4. So that's really the first top half of our piece there. Then we're going to focus on doing the bottom half. We're going to start at 6 1/4. Six 7/8. Hopefully I've made the picture big enough that you can get in there and you can see. 7 3/4. 9 inches. I'm running out of space down here. And 10 3/4. Come up a little bit so you can see those measurements. Then we have 2 measurements along the bottom. Remember, our 0 is clear over here, so we're getting into some bigger numbers up here. Our first measurement is going to be at 11 1/4, and that is our first measurement from the right side. And then we're going to come over here to 9 1/2. Okay, so lots of measurements. As Sandy is saying, this is going to be a pause and rewind moment, a screenshot moment. Pause it, take your pencil, write those measurements down. These are all the measurements that you need along the edge coming from the outside. Everything for the most part is going to come out here from your middle. You can make some adjustments on how you do that, and I will talk about how I just made microscopic little, like 1/8 of an inch movements along the up and down on this side here on the left side. But here is your top, right side, and bottom measurements. Okay. Got my ruler. I'm actually going to start in the middle. So the first measurements I'm going to do are going to be the 5 3/4 and the 6 1/4 inch. Those are my first 2 measurements. I'm going to start at 6 inches. 6 inches is right here in the middle. And I'm going to come in at 6 inches, and I'm going to find that 5 3/4. Remember, 0's at the top. So here's 5, and I'm going to come down 3/4 of an inch towards 6, and I'm going to do a pencil line. Now do your pencil line so you can see it. And then I'm going to do a second pencil line coming over here to 6 1/4. Okay. So those are my first two. I've actually done the 5 3/4 and I've done a 6 1/4. I have done a pencil line through the mark. You can't see that I put a pencil line marking off that I've made those, but I did. Now I'm going to work my way up and around towards the top first. So I've done 5 3/4. My next one is 5 1/8. Rather than coming every single one out of this 6-inch line, you can actually, if you see her picture here, see she's got pencil lines. There's a little bit of spacing between some of these pencil lines. The first two that we've already done meet right here in the middle. But then she kind of gives herself a little bit more space when cutting or marking the other ones. So give yourself that space. I'm going to give myself about 1/8 of an inch. So when I come here to 5 1/8, I'm going to find 5 1/8 over here on this side, on my right side. And then I'm going to kind of hold that in place and pivot a little bit, giving myself about 1/8 of an inch space here. And I'm going to mark. Let me bring that up and show you. You can see I gave myself a little bit of space between that pencil line at the top. And I'm going to continue to do that as I work my way up and around. So I've done 5 1/8. My next one is 4 1/4. Remember, I'm 4 from the top and then that 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to bring it down, give myself a little bit of space, and mark a pencil. Next one, 3 inches. Honestly, the hardest part of this whole thing was figuring out those measurements. Once you've got them, it's just some pencil lines. 1 1/4. Now I'm going to swing over here to the top. I'm coming over to 3/4 of an inch. Remember, 0's right here, 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to come here to 2 1/2. There's 2 1/2. I've got it marked with my pencil. I can put my pencil there, line up my ruler, and then rotate my ruler, keeping that pencil on the paper. It gives it that pivot point, and then mark. So you can't see my pencil lines, but they're there, I promise you. The big thing is you see how I gave myself a little bit of space in that center area as I made my lines. That's just kind of, it's just going to help you when it's time to start cutting these things with your trimmer. But you can see I've worked all the way around that top part. All right, now it's time to do the bottom. It's the same thing along the bottom, giving myself that measurement. So I'm going to come in here. I've already done 6 1/4. I marked that. My next one is 6 7/8. So I'm not quite all the way down to 7. Here's my 6 7/8. Let's see here. It's going to be easier for me to do it this way. Seven 3/4. 7 3/4. Giving myself some space. 9 inches. Putting your pencil there as that pivot is really helpful. Basically, I'm finding the measurement with my pencil. I did the 9, now it's 10 3/4. Here's my 10, I'm gonna come down to 10 3/4, put my pencil, put my ruler up there, and then rotate my ruler around to where I wanna draw that end point, and with my pencil line. Now I've got all the side done. It's time to come here to my bottom. My bottom edge here is 11. Here's the deal. My bottom is at 11 3/4, but what I want you to remember is that 0's over here. So I actually need to find, or excuse me, 11 1/4. I need to come over to 11 and then 1/4 of an inch right there. And then I need to find 9 1/2. So here's 9, there's 10. So here's 9 1/2. And put that one in there. Okay, now I've got all my rays done. Okay, so now it's time to remove my paper from the back, from my mat. I'm going to go ahead and rub off any of that adhesive, removable adhesive. You could definitely see why adhering this to our mat was so important. I'm going to pick up all of these Post-it notes. I don't need them anymore. I would definitely recommend transferring these numbers over to your handout. And now it's time to get our trimmer out and start cutting. In general, what you probably start doing is kind of just cut it. I don't want to say cut it down the middle. You're actually going to find, you can find where your middle is. I don't have a true middle. I have lines on either side of the middle. I'm going to just pick one of them and start cutting. I'm going to set this piece aside for the moment. I'll come back to it. Here is where I want you, if you have those two pieces of background, I want you to get those out, because you're going to, as you cut these, you're going to put them on every other one. So this first piece that I cut, I'm just going to pick one. It doesn't matter, just as long as you alternate. We'll go with that one. That's the first piece. The second one that I'm cutting, I'm just cutting along that pencil line. This one goes on the other piece. I'm going to rotate around and keep cutting. The cutting actually goes pretty quick. You could use scissors if you want. This piece is going to come back to this side. This one goes up to the top, that one. Getting down here to some chunky pieces. Now, if your cuts are not perfect, if you don't follow your lines perfect, it's not a big deal. And I'm going to cut this last piece. So this last piece I have learned was a little bit of a pain. What I actually worked out for me was actually coming in here and wrapping around and trying to straddle both pieces, coming from the top and cutting down the middle. Let's see. Oh, no, this piece is the bottom. This piece comes up here. Now it's time to start the second piece. In general, you won't want to start cutting from the tip. You'll want to cut from your end piece. This piece goes up to the top, on the top one. And just keep working your way around. This is the other piece. Again, this last two cuts, it was just so much easier for me to come in here and it was a little bit of a pain to cut this last piece. You might need to use scissors. Just getting that grip on it was a little bit of a challenge. None of these pieces butt up next to each other, so if you have to cut them with scissors, it's definitely just fine. Okay, so there's my 2 rays, all right? Or my 2 sunburst, I guess, borders. But as you can see, if I rotate them around, it's really cool. I mean, it really is cool. If I rotate them around, though, one of them ends up turning upside down, correct? You see how that would impact why using a non-directional paper is going to be the best. Now it's a matter of trying to adhere your pieces all into place. So what my recommendation is, you're going to want to have repositionable adhesive for sure. I'm going to have my silicone mat here available because I will be putting a lot of adhesive on the tips there, and you just want to make sure it doesn't rub off or adhere to something else. You have some pieces that are very easy to get into place, especially on one of the borders where you have the corner pieces. Those automatically just go into space. What I actually would maybe encourage you to think about doing is not do this side first, but do this side first. And the reason is we are actually going to use the pieces of this one. This is the one that has the burst that goes up into the corner. We are going to use that one as our, we're going to use the pieces out of it to help us lay these pieces in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this back around to this side, and I can grab this piece and lay it here. I'm going to grab this piece is on top of it, and I'm going to put some adhesive. What that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to put this piece along the edge, and this is going to allow me to butt this other piece in. I use this piece that was my corner piece of my second border. I brought it over to this side to help me guide to place that first piece. Now I'll be able to go ahead and put it over here. Remember, this one was super easy for me to place over here, right? Because it's a corner piece. It goes right in that corner. Same thing for this one. Now what I can do before I place this piece, I'm going to grab this piece, this corner piece, and I'm going to put it up here. This is my next piece. I should call these border A and border B, probably, if I would have been smart. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this border, or that piece, to lay in this piece, or as a segment. So there it goes. Pull this piece out, and it goes back over here. Now I will grab this one. I'm going to put it right there. Pull out this one. I'm seeing a lot of this piece, and that just really bothers me. But I did find this was truly the easiest way to put everything together, using one of the templates to help you. Now, when we go to put this one together, I'll show you the trick for that one. Be generous with your adhesive. We're going to do some trimming that you will see. It's just helpful if you are a little bit more generous. You're going to have some pencil lines to erase. I definitely have pencil lines to erase. And once you get the groove of how to use the alternating pieces as like the little spacers, everything starts to come together really quick. And because, I've got a pattern here that I could definitely tell me that, that I know that I don't want to put that piece there. That's not the piece I need. I need the piece that's next to it. I ran out of adhesives, so I'm switching out my quick change. So my NASCAR pit stop. where repositionable adhesive gets to be the star of the show. All right, so just keep grooving along here. You do get 2 borders out of this if you decide to do both sides. I will tell you, to me, when you cut that, they do have us one additional cut that we have to do with these, and this border, this side here where you have the cardstock at the bottom and the cardstock up here, to me was the better side to do. And I'll talk about that in a little bit why. So if you're thinking I'm only doing one side, I'm going to tell you do this side. The pieces here that are in the corner, that the way we do some trimming, they end up being significantly cut and reduced. So if you want to see a lot of your pattern, this is the one. The cardstock being in these corners is the one that you want. This side here, when we start to trim things down, we do start to cut off a significant portion of the pattern. And I've got a kind of a chunky pattern. The suns are kind of big. And so I lost a little bit of it when I ended up cutting. But overall, that's kind of just, my thoughts there. Okay, so next up, we are going to do this other side, and how we are going to do that. First of all, these were really easy to put together, right? These first few pieces, super easy. The corner pieces, we know exactly where they go. They go in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere the corner pieces into place. There's 4 pieces that are a little bit more challenging only because they're not anchored anywhere with something as convenient as a corner. So now what we can do here is these pieces, we can just kind of roughly get an idea. I mean, you really could probably just kind of wing it and figure it out, right? I'm having a little bit of some difficulties with this one, probably because I'm trying to do it all on camera and, sometimes it hates me. That is. So what we can actually do here is, how did I do this? Oh, I know what I ended up doing. To help out with this piece, we can actually just kind of mirror it. This is going to help us a little bit here with our spacing, theoretically. In general, that's what I want, okay? So this one, when they're both facing this direction, I take this piece, everything's adhered, I'm going to rotate it around. And what I really should see is I should see alternating pieces. So like this piece right here on my unadhered border, it's going to go right there between those pieces and come down. You're just kind of filling in the gaps. So this piece is going to come where that spacing is and should come into the middle. Now remember, I don't have to be perfect in this area. In these center areas, doesn't have to be perfect because you actually cut them off. So if it's not perfect, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's a hot mess there in the middle, that's okay. There we go. I've got my 2 borders. Now, after all of that, we're going to come in here to the last part of step 2. Step 2, basically everything we just did there was all a part of step 2. I know it's pretty intense. We're going to cut a 1/2 inch off of both sides of each one of these pieces. So we're taking them down from 4 inches down to 3-inch wide borders. I am only going to do one of them. Actually, I'll do both because then I can show you the difference. Okay, so we're going to cut here. Come in here. I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off of both sides. So I've cut off that crazy mess that was in the middle. I'm going to come here to the opposite side. I could just leave it like this. If you want to have a wider border, you could just leave it like this. We just kind of cleaned up that center part if you want it to be wider. Per their directions, I'm going to go ahead and cut the other 1/2 inch off, bringing this down to a total width of 3 inches. Okay, so you can see there, this is how much of my pattern I've cut off. All right, of my pattern paper, my sunshine. Now, when I come over to this piece, right, this is the piece that I told you that if you don't need 2 pieces, you're going to lose more of your designer paper here when we make these cuts than you do on the other version. And you can see right now here, I'm cutting off how much more of the pattern paper I'm cutting off. See, look at that. It's a ton of that pattern paper. I have really chopped down that edge there, but I still have the burst. If I didn't want to cut the other side, I could just have a 3.5 inch wide. I'm going to come over here though, cut it down to 3 inches so they match. They're both 3 inches wide. I didn't press quite hard enough to get through all those sheets. I'm also working on a table that is not what I would call sturdy. It's a folding table and it has some give to it. But you can see I've cut off a lot of the rays here, and I just don't think it shows as much of the pattern as this particular one does. And that's why I focused on using this one. I've got the big chunks here where I can see my sunshine pattern. As compared to over here, I just felt like you didn't get to see quite as much of the sunshine. So I really liked this one. Both of them would be fine if I needed two pieces. Okay, so now it's time to do the background pieces. So I'm kind of going back up to step 1. They actually had us cutting some 3 5/8 inch background with the 3 1/4 inch background to layer things. I'm doing the separate strips method. My background piece where they show the red on the side is going to be this brown color. So I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to cut myself about a 3/4 inch piece. I want it to be a little chunky, give myself plenty of room to adhere things to it. So there's 1. If I was doing 2 borders, I would need 4 of these strips. I'm only going to make 1 in the interest of time. There's 2. So I have 2 3/4 inch pieces. Next up, I'm going to use the stripe paper here, and I'm using it as that little bit of that accent. They use a white, very thin bit of white in there. I'm going to cut this piece to about right around a 1/2 inch is the size I'm going to go with. I need to straighten up. This piece is a little wonky. I'm going to straighten it out. I obviously got a little careless with some of my cuts. So there we go, 1/2 inch. And I'll do another one at 1/2 inch. This is my paper saving, add some borders to your border technique where we just cut strips of paper. Grab my mini tape runner. If you guys have not ever tried the mini tape runner, it's pretty fantastic. It's the red refill. It just puts out a very, you can, there it goes. See that nice little thin strip? That's what we mean by mini. It's kind of like a thin border or thin tape runner. And I'm going to go ahead and run some adhesive down the, let's see, I want to put, let's see here. I want my, I think what I'm going to do to make this easy is I'm actually going to just line up the inside edge of these 2 pieces together. That'll give me about that 1/4 inch all the way on both sides. Remember, my brown strip is 3/4 of an inch. My orange strip is 1/2 an inch. So if I just actually have those line up like that, it works perfect. So I actually will be able to use, I'll just use some repositionable on this one rather than the mini. I'll use the mini when I'm putting on the border itself. I could have used regular adhesive there too, but I'm going to just go ahead and I'll line these up so that their inside edges are flush with each other. That'll give me a very nice, consistent outside edge. This technique can work with any of the borders, any border where you need to add a border to your border, which is a little bit of a, like, what? You can use this technique rather than cutting those big swaths of paper and having like 3 or 4 layers behind your border. Make borders for your borders. Again, I could have used a decorative trimmer or decorative blade on that to cut those. So next up, and now it's time to attach my border, my sunburst, to the pieces here. And this is where I'm going to use my mini tape runner. I'm just going to use the mini on the outside edge of this dark sea green. I'm going to give myself, I'm generous enough with it. How many of you have used the mini tape runner? If you have not, you really should try it. And then I'm going to line this up. What I can do is I could come in here, use my mat to help me out, my cutting mat, line up the border for my border on one of the straight lines, and then come in here and just pick where I'm going to go. And then just whatever you pick at the bottom, you also pick at the top. And that just helps you get a nice, even, should be relatively even border. Nice edge. And the same thing. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to rotate everything around. It just works easier for me to do that and give myself that same spacing. And there we go. So now, we've got to go. If I wanted to build the other one, I do the exact same thing and just make it on the other side for the other one. Now to finish out this border, like I said, I wanted this to be all about a picture of Kitty, pictures. I've got a few of them on my camera roll. Well, she will be just lounging in the sun or sitting there in the sun. The sun just looks so beautiful as it filters through. I mean, it was you cat hair, right? It's just so cute. So you can see here, I created in the Fur Baby mat pack, there was a 4x6 mat that had these, has the 3 hearts with a striped, diagonal striped orange. The other side of it was a journaling box. So I cut it in half. I think I ended up cutting that orange spot down just a little bit more. And then I just decided to use, I did some stitching around it. I added the script black stickers, and it says I, and then I highlighted with stitching the center heart to kind of be the love, like I heart sun. And then I used that firework punch in some canary yellow. Because the canary picks up on the soft yellow tones in that sunshine paper. So that is the I Love Sun border, which is my take on the Magic Moments border. So let me just grab these 3 borders that we made, or my versions of them, so you can see how you can adapt any of the borders to work with your collections, play with tools, try out new techniques. Here it is. So you can see what the possibilities are. Unfortunately, they're not all the same direction, so it makes it really hard to show you. I mean, if they were all vertical, it looks glorious, but you can see here 2 vertical, 1 horizontal. They all could have been done the other direction. Just this does not have to go to the side. I could easily come in here and rotate this and come in something like that at the bottom if I needed to, or something. I don't know. Chances are it'll go side to side. Okay. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Let me switch over here. And next week, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm going to the game. right? So I'm going to Monday's game in Phoenix, which is game 3. So that's like I said, my son started buying tickets in the 7th inning, and then he messages me and says, "Are you buying the flights?" And so then I'm on the airlines trying to get my son from Pullman, Washington to Phoenix and get myself from Seattle to Phoenix. So we've got a whirlwind trip. I am going to try really hard to do Scrapbook Live next week, but it may not happen. I'm just going to tell you right now. It depends if I can find a project that I know I can put together easy enough, or if I just pre-plan. I don't leave till Sunday morning. I've got time. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to it. For you Ranger fans, I hope that it's a fantastic series. It's going to be fun for either team that wins, but I really want it to be the Diamondbacks. So everybody have a fantastic week. Remember, this was launch week. There is a new set of products from Creative Memories, the Nordic Winter, and the military one, the Called to Serve. Both are fantastic. They actually look like the browns and the blues are all really lovely. We're having some really great collections with those colors. So down the road, November, we've got all sorts of fun stuff coming from Creative Memories. We've got, I've got classes, the Christmas cheer class we're going to do. We've got a virtual crop coming up. Secret box will be revealed. We're going to have a Black Friday sale at some point in November. I don't know specifics on that one yet. So I would definitely say make sure you like and follow my Facebook page. I do a lot of announcements there. If you are working with another advisor, make sure you're tuned in with their announcements as well for any of the upcoming things they've got going on for you to participate in. All right, everybody have a fantastic rest of your week. Enjoy your day. I will see you all hopefully next week. I'm sure I'll have some photos that I'll post along the way. All right, take care. I'll see you soon.